Welcome to the Susan Brender Show. It's all about you. Featuring shows on health and wellness, the performing arts, politics, and people who inspire you to be your very best. And now, here's Susan Brender.
I'm Susan Brender, and this is the Susan Brender Show. Today, a trusted advisor to CIOs and PMO executives is on our show, and his name is Gerald J. Leonard. He's the author of The Culture is the Base, 7 Principles for Developing a Culture That Works. He's currently the president and CEO of Principles of Execution, PofE, a strategic project portfolio management and IT governance consulting firm based in Metro Washington, D.C. area. I want to welcome to my show Gerald Leonard.
Hi, Susan. How are you?
Well, you know, Gerald, it's been a really interesting time in our history. The election seems to have changed everything. At least I think so. So I want you to tell our audience how the election of Mr. Trump is going to make a difference in the economic world. Is it going to have any kind of real major impact?
Well, you think about the idea of the book I wrote called Culture is the Base, and the fact that there are 7 major parts to culture. You think of the election itself and the rhetoric and the verbiage and a lot of the media things that were happening, the Twitter tweets that were going on. I think it has a lot of people nervous. I think it has a lot of countries nervous that we have, as a country, elected someone in a way that's been somewhat unprecedented.
Right.
And so I think it will have an impact. What the outcome of that impact will be is to be seen. Mm-hmm. He's also a great marketer, so a lot of that could have been for marketing purposes. And now that he's in office and he realizes the magnitude of what he has to face, we'll have to see which Donald Trump we actually get. Do we get the election or pre-election Donald Trump, or do we get the presidential Donald Trump, mm-hmm. who's a businessman and has to own up to really following through on his promises? So I think it's still to be seen.
Yeah, well, of course it is. And the fact of the matter is, generally speaking, it's about the cabinet. Now, is there any idea who he's going to bring on in his cabinet that's going to be a very important person for the economics of our country?
I have that one. Honestly, I can't say because I haven't studied his cabinet and who he's trying to bring on. Mike Pence, his vice president, seems to be a lot more stable and a lot more level-headed and a lot more of the Republican candidate that you would expect to be running. And so I think he's going to bring that level of maturity and at least political savviness to the table because he's used to how politics and how governments run and governing the state of Indiana. Mm-hmm. But as far as who he's going to pick, who's going to influence him, how that's going to play out, I think that's still to be seen.
Right. Now, people might want to know how you got started in this field, and what do you think has made you successful throughout your career?
Well, it's been the ability to kind of keep my ear to the ground to see where trends are going, and then to be a learner, to be someone who's always reading. I'm normally in the middle 1 to 2 or 3 books time or more, really? And just constantly, not just so much looking at the news, but looking at the industry trends, technology trends, globalization trends, because when you see like mobile technology is taking off, cybersecurity is taking off, just the way applications are being generated. The latest thing I've been getting into is really learning a lot more about agile portfolio management, project management, and the ability for companies to be agile, and how that's changing the face of how things get done. Which means solutions and services can be generated much faster, processes can be implemented and automated much faster. You can leverage a global supply chain instead of it being a local supply chain. And all that has a great impact on our economy and on the local worker, because jobs that we thought a few years ago would never be replaced have now been replaced by iPhone apps.
By what?
By the iPhone applications, all about applications and technology and automation.
Yes.
And so I think we're all in for a interesting period of time where we're going to continually see the reallocation of jobs and the reallocation of the workforce. And I think to stay in the game, at least for myself, what I've learned is I need to constantly be someone who's learning and looking at where is the value for what I do.
Right. And
continually making sure that I'm positioning myself in that place.
You know, I think that there are many things about investing that people want to know. A lot of people, certainly middle-class people, don't have a lot to invest. But if you had a chance to speak to a lot of people, would you tell them to invest in the market? Because, you know, the market fluctuates and it, you know, goes up and down, and you can lose a lot of money just very, very fast. So how do you believe that even a young child, for example, ought to get involved in investing?
Well, I think investing is always a smart thing to do. I think it's what you invest in. I think if you follow the thinking of a Warren Buffett or someone along that stature who is a very, pragmatic and studious investor, I'm sure he's still investing. But he sees that the investing at this point is more of a sell, because if he's investing in very solid companies, and he's getting them at a bargain price, and he's planning on hanging on there for the long term, then he has the funds to cushion any kind of downturn. I think the challenge is as we are getting, the baby boomers and as folks are getting close to retirement, when it comes to investing, being able to look at diversification and allocation of your resources. And that's a lot of what I do with corporations as far as their capital expenditures and investing in their own businesses, and how do you leverage things like project portfolio management to help them diversify their assets. And I think individuals have to constantly think through about diversification. Now,
there is such a thing called annuities. I would like you to define what an annuity is and whether it's well, you talked about retired people. Is that something that they should put their money in?
Well, I mean, it depends on the type of annuity. And again, my portfolio management experience is not totally into the stock portfolio. It's more in the corporate portfolios of how do corporations invest in large assets as far as keeping their companies moving forward and staying on their strategy. But when it comes to annuities, I think it depends on the individual circumstance.
Right.
And obviously, they need to talk to their financial advisor, someone who that is can give them that type of advice. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm more of a portfolio management consultant who leverages the concept of culture in helping organizations. So from that standpoint, I would say annuities are interesting, and I actually own a couple of annuities, and I leverage them myself. But I would say it's definitely something that you have to talk to your financial advisor about and make sure that's the right thing for you.
Now, you talked about diversity. So I gather that what you're saying is that people or companies have to be diverse. They have to invest in things that go from oil to banks to retail. Now, most people without a financial advisor or with somebody trying to help them don't really know. They take a guess. Now, I want you to think about this. I want you to tell our audience, if they came to you, we'll talk about a company. If a company came to you and said, we want to make sure that our investors are safe, and we want them to be very careful about where they put their money. how would you start your conversation with them?
Well, first off, I think, again, if we're talking individual investors or if we're talking corporate investors, I would say that, one, they need to study the market and really look at the trends. And, again, if it's individual investors, they should contact their financial advisor to determine the right places for them to put their money. If it's large corporations, then they need to look at trends of, where are they looking to place their organization? Where, from a strategic standpoint, how are they planning on laying out their strategy? Mm-hmm. And then looking at, the capital assets they do have, what are the best bets for them? Because with diversification, again, in my world of project portfolio management, I usually leverage the Gartner framework, which is the concept of how do you help a company grow their business, transform their business, and run their business. And so the diversification comes in the standpoint of, are you investing in the business in a way that keeps it stable and keeps it running? Mm-hmm. Are you investing in growth? In other words, you're reducing your expenses and streamlining your processes, but you're also at the same time growing, investing in things that's going to grow your revenue. Yeah. And then are you transforming your business, looking at the market and saying, what are the one or two bets that you can make that's going to put a moat between you and your competitors and allow you to grow your company mm-hmm. in a strategic manner and give you that, whether it's a first mover advantage or a differentiation advantage in the market that mm-hmm. customers are willing to see value and pay for.
I think you almost covered this question, but I'm going to ask it again. So what do you think is poorly understood or unresolved within the area that you're in, and why is this so?
Well, I think, what's poorly understood in the area that I'm in is, is companies, especially companies that aren't brand name companies. I think brand name companies get it. Companies don't understand how important it is for, one, the leadership of the full organization to be totally unified, to have a strategic voice, and in that any major changes that they're making, that they have to have a holistic process for thinking about the culture of the business. They can't just say, we want to become X in the market, mm-hmm. and then we're going to implement 5 or 6 projects or programs that are going to get us there, without thinking through holistically about their people, yeah. about the culture that they're creating, about the buy-in. Because a lot of times what companies will, why projects fail and why initiatives fail is that they hadn't taken the time to get everyone involved on the same page.
Right.
So
go ahead. No, please go ahead.
No, I was going to say my model is that with the 7 principles from developing a culture that works is really looking at, do we have a unified vision for the company? Mm-hmm. Do we have a set of values and principles and guiding principles that the company is following and has embraced, that they are then making sure that everyone on board within the company, employees, from the secretary up to the CEO, that they've bought into that. And that buy-in, and one of the things I say is buy-in is a team sport, that you can't have part of the organization buy in. You have to have everyone buying into the vision and the values of the company. Mm-hmm. And then you have to wrap that into stories, stories that the leadership team can share and share with stories of how customers are experiencing those values, how employees are living those values, so that it touches their heads, it touches their hearts, it touches their hands, and it gets everyone on the same page. Right. And then you wrap that around best practices. You build an environment that supports that, and then you have an organization that can actually execute. Many times companies are looking at making these changes, and they're looking at people, process, and technology, but they're not looking holistically at the overall culture of the business, and are we strategically making the right culture change, and can we absorb all the changes that we're planning on making?
Right. You brought up the word, a very important word, and that is technology. How has that advanced the way things are done? There must be, it must be so much easier to do things with the new technologies, but it also can confuse people. So what's your feeling about the way things have evolved in the technology world?
I think we live in an amazing time of things that you can do with technology, whether it's virtual teams, whether it's business intelligence, whether it's things like Watson, IBM Watson, whether it's big data. We live in an incredible time, but we still have parts of our businesses that are sitting on archaic technology. And so a part of it is getting the business holistically onto the same platform, and getting everyone up to speed on what the latest technologies are and what they can do, but then at the same time not embracing or bringing on technology for the sake of technology.
Right. Right.
And I think go ahead.
No, Gerald, I'm interested in understanding the idea that people have to have, now I'm talking about individual people. I'm not talking about companies. My thoughts are that companies are evolving too. And for example, they say that in Europe and in Japan, for example, that there's going to be a terrible future for them at the moment. And we have to understand what the trends are and how we, as a country, help people make money. Do you agree that we're going to see problems in Europe and in Japan?
I mean, I think we're on the verge of seeing some real challenges there, but I think at the same time, we within the U.S. have to, again, look at those trends and see how can we shore up our companies in a way that doesn't impact our current workforce here, but also, there are a lot of companies now that have offices and divisions and areas, and we're relying a lot on China, on Europe, and so when they're going through their struggles, we tend to go through that struggle as well, and so we definitely have to be on top of that and keep our eye on the ball with the challenges that they're going through, and set up a strategy that doesn't rely on them as much or find other alternatives, so that we're not as reliant on them in certain areas. In areas that we are, then we need to develop our risk mitigation strategies, our plans to thwart any of those risks that could be realized that would have a major impact on our business.
Yeah. Gerald, there are a lot of people who watch various shows that deal with financial issues on CNBC and various other channels. Fox does it, and various others do. Do you think that do you think it's a problem that people listen to television? Think about some of the people that are on. It's kind of an entertainment opportunity for them, but people listen to them, and sometimes it could be a problem. Do you think it's a problem, or would you listen to those people that I mentioned on, CNBC, MSNBC, and Fox and various other channels? What do you think about when they tell you what to buy, what to sell?
Well, I think when it comes to the news and telling you what to buy and what to sell, a lot of the analysts and investors, why does the market go up and down the way it does? A lot of it's based on emotions and fear. And although, there are certain shows where they're studying the market and they can give you great indicators and insights, it's better to work with a financial advisor, someone who can guide you based on solid investment principles, more than just the latest hype or if there's a terrorist bomb or there's something that happens around the world. Because of emotional reaction, we tend to pull money in and pull money out, and that creates so much volatility and issues with your investment portfolio, where if you base your investment principles on solid principles of, am I buying a good stock, or am I buying a good company, or am I buying a good asset, then it helps somewhat take the emotions out of it. I think a lot of people tend to hurt themselves when they simply listen to the talking heads on the television as far as their guidance when it comes to their own financial standing.
Yeah. Now, when people decide that they want to invest and or they want to buy real estate, you remember what happened with the banks, okay? And there's been a rumor around talking a little bit about a bubble. Do you see a bubble in the future?
I know that they're talking about the interest rates at this point, and that they've been holding the interest rates down. I think if the interest rates tend to go up, and obviously, a lot of people are looking at the challenges with healthcare right now because the price of healthcare is going up, and I think the economy is getting to a place where we could run into a bubble. But again, I'm not the kind of a portfolio manager again that deals with just the big financial indicators along that line. But I do see that it could be stormy waters ahead.
Yeah. That's an important thing for people to know. Now, if there are stormy weathers ahead, I know you don't work with individuals, but I'm sure that our audience is curious about this. So if there is, as you say, a bubble ahead of us, do you sell or do you buy?
Again, I have to say they need to talk to their own financial advisors based on where they are in their retirement age or in their planning cycle. Because if they're early on, they may be able to hold on and weather the storm. If they're later on and they have lots of money in the stock market and and they see a lot of volatility coming up, they may want to talk to their advisor and look at putting it places where it's a little bit more secure and less volatile.
Yeah.
But that should be based on their asset allocation, again, based on where they are in their journey towards retirement.
I understand. There was a time where you used to get some interest from banks, and now there is practically none. So people are always thinking, how should they invest? Should they put money in the stock market? Should they buy real estate? People just don't know what to do. And in fact, when you talk about companies, I think back when banks and various other institutions used to sell stocks to their employees. And the employees believed in the company, so they bought, their whole portfolio was the company they worked for. And if you had a chance to tell people about that, what would you say to them again? And what would you also tell the company? Because that's really it's a sad thing because people lose tremendous amounts of money.
Right. In that situation, obviously, I think it's, again, one of those guiding principles of do unto others well, right? And also, Google has a great principle of do no evil, right? And so when you look at, again, their guiding principles, if a company or individual has guiding principles, and let's say their guiding principle is integrity, then you're going to, and that's your first guiding principle, then you're, by your own guiding principle or by your values, you're going to have to provide input and advice around what's right for people, not just what's best for the bottom line of your own company.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of it is driven, a lot of the advice, a lot of the direction that companies go when they give advice about investing, it's also driven by the values that they espouse or that they hold on to. And it also is driven by the prioritization of those values.
Right.
If they value the bottom line greater than they value integrity, then they will say and do whatever they need to do to get to grow their revenue. And we've seen that in the market with, Wells Fargo and some others who've done things that have not been, forthright to their customers nor to their employees, because one of their greatest values were to grow the bottom line. But when you see situations or banks or organizations where it's integrity is their principal value, and they believe that, then even when it hurts, they're willing to make decisions and do things for their customers and their employees that are going to be the best for everyone and not just for the bottom line.
I hear you. Now, let's get back to your book for a moment. You published this new book, which you call Culture is the Base, okay?
Yes.
7 Principles for Developing a Culture That Works. Now, I see in your bio that you have a music degree. Did you use the word culture is the base? Why the bass? I mean, is that about an instrument? I mean, why that word?
Yeah, it is about an instrument. You think about your favorite songs. Your favorite songs always have an amazing bass line, or a bass line that's very memorable. And just like the musical instrument, the bass, sets the tone for a great song, the culture of a company or an individual sets the tone for that company or that individual.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so the analogies throughout the book, I leverage my background where I did my bachelor's and master's in music. I've been in the project portfolio management world for over 20-odd years as a consultant, working with government agencies and private organizations in the world of project portfolio management. But I'm also still a professional musician where I play different shows here and there when I get calls from friends who are musicians. And having worked in both areas, I've been able to recognize what companies can actually learn from the music world or from true musicians and the culture that gets developed when you have whether it's an orchestra or whether you have a band that pulls together and becomes really unified. There's an emotional connection that gets created.
Yeah. Gerald, I don't want you to tell too much about the book, because I want people to buy it and to read it, because it sounds really like a very interesting book. But you just mentioned that there are lots of advice in the book. Just give one piece to our audience, and we'll leave it there. And then the next time we interview you, we'll get more into the book. But give them one little snippet, if you will, of what's in the book.
Okay. Well, one of the things that I talk about are the buy-in is so important. And so one of the things that I share is just some statistics about buy-in. And this is a stat from the Corporate Leadership Council. It says engaged organizations grew profits as much as 3 times faster than their competitors. They report that highly engaged organizations have the potential to reduce staff turnover by 87%. And to improve performance by 20%. And this is in organizations that are engaging their staff. In other words, they're sharing with them the values, they're sharing with them the vision, and they believe that buy-in is a team sport. So they're getting everyone to buy in. When those organizations get everyone to buy in, you think of Zappos, you think of Nordstrom, you think of Amazon, they cut their turnover of employees by 87%, and they're growing their bottom line by 20% or more, simply because they take the time to make sure that everyone is bought into the journey that they have as an organization.
Wow. Gerald, this book sounds quite amazing, actually, and I'm sure that they'll benefit from it. So if people would like to know more about how they should contact you, how they should get your book, ways in which they can invest, how do they do that?
They can reach out to me at my website, principlesofexecution.com. They can find the book on Amazon by looking up Culture is the Base. I've gotten a lot of reviews, and I've also gotten a lot of people to endorse the book. I've gotten Jim Cathcart and Shep Hyken to endorse it, as well as a number of other key folks, and I've done some work with Jack Canfield, and he's been able to kind of tweet about the book and get behind it. Mm-hmm. And so I'm excited about where it's going. The book has a website called developingaculturethatworks.com, and you can learn more about me there and about my work.
That would be great. Well, my guest today has been Gerald J. Leonard. He's the author of Culture is the Base, 7 Principles for Developing a Culture That Works. I want to thank you so very, very much, Gerald Leonard, for being on the Susan Brender Show, and I want to invite you back to talk when we know a little bit more about what the government is going to do and how Trump is going to lead them. I have to say thank you for being on my show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Susan Brender Show. To be a guest, email sebrender@yahoo.com.